The glow of the computer screen was the only light in the room, casting long shadows that seemed to flicker with each new email notification. I found the monotony of spam and work emails broken by one that immediately drew my attention. A name I hadn't seen in years flashed in the center column: Mike Jenkins. The subject line read, "Need your help." Invitation to follow, and against the better judgment screaming in my head, I clicked it open. The message was brief, riddled with a sense of urgency that didn't quite match the Mike I remembered. "Kevin, I don't have much time. I've stumbled onto something. I can't explain it all here. Check the invitation. It's your only way to understand. Don't trust anyone else with this. Remember the old days. It's like that again, but worse." Mike? Beneath the text was a link, a string of characters that made no sense, hinting at its origin from the depths of the dark web. Mike and I had been through our share of trouble back in college, diving into online worlds we had no business exploring. But this felt different. The Mike I knew was level-headed, not prone to cryptic messages and clandestine invitations. The email closed with a plea: "Help me, Kevin. And for God's sake, be careful." Nostalgia and an old sense of loyalty gnawed at me. Mike was more than a college buddy. He was the one who'd been there when life had thrown its worst at me. How could I turn away now, when he was clearly reaching out from the shadows of danger? I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing with the potential hazards. The dark web wasn't a playground. It was a digital abyss where the worst of human depravity could be found. Was Mike entangled in something illegal? Or was this some elaborate prank? No. The quiver in the tone of his writing was unmistakable. Mike was scared. The decision to follow the link felt like stepping off a cliff. The screen blinked to a page that was as barren as it was foreboding. A countdown timer ticking away, and a message that sent a chill down my spine. "You've been chosen." The cursor blinked. The room seemed to grow colder. Mike's desperation echoed in my head. What had he gotten himself into? And more importantly, by following this breadcrumb, what had I just stepped into? There was no backing out now. Mike needed me. And whether it was the old bond we shared or the human inclination to unravel the mysteries before us, I knew one thing for certain. I was going to find out what being chosen meant. The chosen message burned into my thoughts as I stumbled through digital back alleys, each click dragging me deeper into the web's underbelly. The countdown was a mocking reminder, each second ticking away Mike's safety. Or was it mine now? Scouring through forums that made my skin crawl, I picked up whispers of a party, a dark web myth, or so I thought. Encrypted messages painted a gathering shrouded in secrecy, a place where the twisted elite reveled in the forbidden. It was all too cryptic, yet every word dripped with the same clandestine urgency as Mike's email. I had to reach out to him, to get some semblance of clarity. My call connected not to Mike, but to a shaky breath on the other end. "Elsa." "Kevin," she whispered, the fear in her voice a stark contrast to the composed woman I remembered. "Did Mike send you something?" When I mentioned the invitation, her breath hitched, and she was suddenly distant. Her words a hurried stream. "Don't. It's not safe, Mike. He went too far this time. That place, it's a nightmare." She wouldn't say more, no matter how I pressed. The mystery was a name she let slip, a moniker that echoed across the forums, tied to rumors of a figure that pulled the strings in the darkest corners of the internet. The call ended abruptly. Elsa's last words, a chilling plea. Forget about the party. Forget about us. As if on cue, my inbox dinged. A new message. No subject, no sender. Just an image that made my blood run cold. A masked figure, its features obscured by a grotesque carnival mask, and beneath it, a caption. "It's too late." The room felt like it was closing in. The masked figure's eyes seemed to follow me, a silent accusation. Mike and Elsa were in over their heads, And now, by some cruel twist of fate, so was I. I couldn't just sit back. Not now. Mike had come to me for a reason, and Elsa's fear. It was a beacon calling me to the depths. I had to go to this damn party, wade through whatever hell awaited, because if there was even the slightest chance I could pull them back from the edge, I had to take it. I replied to the message with 2 words, sealing my decision. I'm in. The response was almost immediate, a set of coordinates and a time. No further instructions, no warnings. Just a when and a where. The mask's vacant eyes mocked me from the screen, and I realized that I was about to step into the unknown, with only the hope that I could find Mike and Elsa before whatever game the mystery had planned claimed them. The coordinates led me to an industrial part of town where the city's heartbeat was a mere echo. A nondescript warehouse stood before me, its presence as unassuming as the night was dark. I could feel the bass thumping from within, a sinister pulse that promised more than just a party. I slipped in, unnoticed among the stream of masked figures, each one donning a facade that concealed more than just their identity. The air was thick with anticipation and something more unsettling. Fear, perhaps, or excitement's twisted cousin. The interior was a grotesque masquerade, the decor a tapestry of opulence and horror. I passed by scenes that made my gut churn. People engaged in acts that blurred the lines between consensual and coerced, between performance and reality. I wondered if this was what hell looked like, a place where souls were both the audience and the spectacle. And there, in the center of this madness, I saw them, Mike and Elsa. They were participants in a twisted performance, a game where the rules were as murky as the intentions of the puppet master, the mystery. Their eyes met mine, a flicker of recognition, then nothing, lost again in the forced charade. I moved to intervene, to pull them out, but the crowd was a living entity, pushing and pulling me in a rhythm that felt calculated. The mystery was here, somewhere, watching us all. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. We were all pawns in their sadistic game. My chance came in a moment of chaos. A scuffle broke out, and the crowd's attention turned. I seized Mike, pulling him to the side. Elsa followed, her movements mechanical, driven by a terror that had stripped her of words. "We need to get out," I hissed, my voice barely audible over the cacophony. Mike's response was a ragged whisper. "It's not that simple. He's watching. The mystery. Hey." The sentence was never finished. The scuffle had been a distraction, a part of the game. They wanted us to run, to feel the hope of escape before they snatched it away. The mystery's minions descended upon us, a flurry of masks and twisted joy. I fought with a desperation I didn't know I possessed, fueled by adrenaline and the primal urge to survive. I managed to break free, catching a last glimpse of Mike and Elsa being swallowed by the crowd, their fates uncertain. I ran, the sounds of the party fading into the night, replaced by the pounding of my own heart. I was out, but freedom had never felt so cold. Mike and Elsa were still inside, and the mystery, well, the game was far from over. I was a part of it now, a player in a story that had no clear end. And somewhere, in the shadows, the mystery was holding the cards, a faceless maestro conducting a symphony of horror. I was alone in the dark, the night air piercing my lungs as I ran. Behind me, the warehouse was a beacon of chaos, its lights flickering as if it were laughing at my feeble escape. The mystery's game had taken a turn. The party had erupted into pandemonium, a frenzy triggered by my act of defiance. I had done something unthinkable, something that would either be my salvation or my undoing. In the heart of that twisted gathering, I had found the server room, a nerve center of cables and monitors, each one a window into the depravity outside. My fingers flew over the keyboards, commands spilling from memory, a digital assault on the mystery's infrastructure. Screens went dark. Music died. The warehouse plunged into silence, then screams. It was the sound of control slipping, of masks falling away to reveal the monsters beneath. I didn't stop to see the results of my sabotage. I couldn't. With the image of Mike and Elsa's haunted faces etched into my mind, I stumbled into the streets, the cold night a sharp contrast to the sweat on my skin. My phone was a dead weight in my pocket, but I pulled it out, dialed 911, and left it off the hook. It was a breadcrumb for the authorities, a silent hope that they'd find something to stop this nightmare. I didn't know if Mike and Elsa had followed in the chaos, if they had found their own way out. I clung to the hope that they were somewhere safe, that they had escaped the madness that the mystery had orchestrated. But there was a gnawing doubt, a question that refused to be silenced. Had they been part of it all along? The city passed in a blur as I moved without direction, a ghost driven by adrenaline. Each shadow seemed to move. Each alley whispered threats. The mystery was still out there, a specter on the edge of reality. Their game had been disrupted, but the players, us, the chosen, were we ever really free? I found myself at the river, the water a black mirror reflecting the void above. The city's sounds were distant here, the party a world away, but the silence was no comfort. It was full of words left unsaid, of screams stifled by fear, and the echo of a countdown that had run out. The dark web invitation was an enigma, one that had pulled me into the abyss. I had come out the other side, but not unscathed. Mike, Elsa, the others. They were a part of the web now, threads in a tapestry that the mystery wove with invisible hands. I turned away from the water, the story unfinished, its end as open as the night sky. The mystery remained a shadow, but I was a survivor, a witness to the darkness that dwells in the corners of our world. And somewhere, in the depth of the dark web, a new invitation was being crafted, a new game set to begin. The loud ring of my phone woke me up from a restless sleep by breaking the silence in my college room. As I stumbled for the device, my heart was racing, and the screen flashed an unknown number. It was 7 in the morning. Calls at this time never have good news. Taylor Reed. The voice was messed up, like it was talking through fuzz. Speaking, I answered, my words a mix of confusion and irritation from being tired. I know you've been chosen, but you don't know me. Deals in the netherworld. You have 70 hours. It felt like someone was buzzing in my ear when the line went dead. It sent a chill down my spine. Been picked. Contracts in the netherworld. From the bottom of my heart, I knew this wasn't a joke, even though it sounded like a joke. In the middle of the night, my laptop called to me from my desk. A simple search led me to Netherworld Contracts, a forum on the dark web where people could buy services that shouldn't be seen in public. While I was typing, my hands were shaking, and I could feel bile rising in my throat. I then came across a thread where an unnamed user was asking for the urgent removal of a problem. My picture, which I had just shared on social media a few days before, was included. I had to do something. The victim didn't just sit there until the end of the movie like in some horror movies. I locked the door, put a chair under the handle, and then called some people. The first was to the police, who said they would look into it, but told me that it would be hard to track down anonymous online threats. Then to Marcus, who has been my best friend since we were kids. He was the one who had my back. With bags under his eyes, he showed up with the dawn, and his drive was the same as mine. We spent the morning adding security cams and new locks that would not be easy to pick to my small student housing. It was Marcus's uncle who was a prepper. He lived and breathed conspiracy ideas, so Marcus picked up a lot from him. Marcus looked at me as the sun went down and long shadows fell across my room, making it look like a castle. He told me, Taylor, we'll get through this. But there was a shake in his voice that made his words sound less sure of himself. The night came on, and there was a very quiet that was almost too much to bear. I did nothing but wait for the shooters to come. I wasn't going to give up easily, though. I had been warned, but I also knew what to do. The person who did this had no idea what they were doing. And I still haven't either. But I was going to find out. When you least expect it, paranoia will swallow you up in darkness, like a shadow following you around and copying everything you do. It had been with me all the time since the night of the call. There were the shoulder looks and quick responses to things that didn't hurt, like the mailman, a stray cat, or the wind. It wasn't all in my head, though. Today, it was the man in the black coat. His look was a little too focused, and he was a little too close by accident. He had been seen 3 times, by the college library, near the coffee shop, and now outside my safe place. Then came the second email, which only had one line. 48 hours. Under it, a timer was ticking, and with each second that went by, a scary limit got closer. I wasn't going to wait for the timer to go off. It's the kind of self-defense class where you learn not how to block hits, but how to make the person who's attacking you feel bad. The teacher, a thin woman with steel, like eyes, told me I would have power. Power to fight back and stay alive. I needed more than just strength, though. I needed to know. The nickname Architect 666 was like a ghost in the machine. It was hidden in the darkness of the dark web. A map would have helped me find the ghost. Kieran walks in. He works as a hacker full-time and as a barista part-time. His skills let me into rooms I didn't know were there. Our coffee had gone cold, so we dove into the dark and followed the digital clues that the Bitcoin transaction had left behind. The blockchain was like a wall, but every wall has a way to get in. The trap went off just as we were about to discover something important. A message with a map and a blinking dot showed up. It said, "Come by yourself if you want answers." It was dangerous and could have been fatal. But the desire to reveal Architect 666 was too strong to refuse. I got to the spot, which was an empty lot surrounded by dark trees. Through the earpiece he gave me, Kieran's voice could be heard. "Watch out, Taylor. This looks like a setup." He had a point. The air changed as soon as I stepped outside. Out of the darkness, figures came out, setting up a quiet ambush. But I wasn't the scared girl I used to be. I fought like an animal trapped in a tight spot. Each strike a word in a story I wouldn't let someone else write. I just barely made it out alive, with bruises all over my body and little air in my lungs. But getting away wasn't a win. To be clear, Architect 666 told me I was now in his world, a place where safety was fake and everything was being watched. I kept going as the countdown did, because staying alive wasn't enough anymore. It was about getting back at Architect 666. It was about taking back control of my life story. The hacker's voice in my ear reminded me that I wasn't alone in this crazy game as I limped back to safety. The screen's light was a bright spot in the dark seas of my new life. Kieran's fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, going deeper into the dark web's world of computers. "Jamie," I said in a whisper. The name made my mouth hurt. My ex-partner, the one who said they would be with me forever, but moved worlds away when college was over. Kieran stopped and looked at me with a serious frown. "Are you sure about this? These things become personal if Jamie is involved." I nodded, and my resolution grew stronger. I need to know. Kieran's skills helped him find the deepest parts of the internet, where hours were turned into code and IP numbers. We found the transaction, which was a wallet full of Bitcoin. The path led us back to a place we didn't expect. This IP address wasn't from another country. It was from Jamie's last known address in the United States. "This doesn't make sense," I said in my head. Jamie had left for a job in Europe, and his social media accounts were marked with the location of that job. Was he really behind this, or was it just a digital trick? Before we could think any further, an unwanted and scary video link appeared. Kieran gave me a wary look. You up for this? I wasn't afraid, but I couldn't afford to be. When I agreed, he clicked. The video was fuzzy, but the sound was clear. It was a warped voice talking about netherworld contracts in a way that seemed all too familiar. As the camera moved, I caught flashes of other people, but their faces were dark. A group of people who are anonymous on the web and are linked together through it. They're not just after you, Kieran said in a low voice. This is bigger. At the end of the movie, there was a logo, a stylized 666, and my countdown. We were running out of time, and the web was closing in on us. Its threads were made by more than one person, not just the one I thought it was. As I leaned back, a quiet scream started to rise in my throat. Whether he was a pawn or an actor, Jamie was a part of this dark web. Architect 666 was eager to tie up all the loose ends, and I was it. But loose ends can make the whole thing fall apart. I was about to pull. As I stood outside the empty building, where Architect 666 had said answers would be found, the last few seconds of the countdown went by. The building was old, and the windows looked like empty eyes. The air was still at night, but my heartbeat wasn't. Are you sure about this? Kieran's voice was static in my ear, a little bit of technology to break the quiet. No, I said, but it ends tonight. When I walked through the door, it creaked open as if it didn't want to be used. My phone, which had scared me so much, was now my flashlight. Its light was weak, but it was beating the darkness. The inside was a building that had been destroyed by time and carelessness. There was loud graffiti on the walls in colors that didn't go with the sad scene. There was a circle of chairs in the middle of the main hall. Take a seat, Taylor Reed. The voice was real, not twisted, and it came from someone who came out of the darkness. Architect 666 wasn't just a handle anymore. It was a man whose eyes looked through you. I did not move. Why? That was the only word that got out. He said, because you're special, with a disgusting smile on his face. Because you fought when other people gave up. That makes you valuable. The plan wasn't meant for me to die. It was meant to get me to join. He was after my fight and my refusal to give in for his network. His web of fear that went far beyond what I had seen. You think I would join you? My voice was filled with disgust, a clear note among the shaky ones of fear. Think of it as survival, he said, moving forward. It wasn't really a choice. I looked over at the chairs. Each one was probably a way out for someone in the same situation as me. After taking one step back, Architect 666 took the same number of steps back as I did. I ran deeper into the building instead of back to the door I'd come in through. Behind me, I could hear the chase, and I could hear my own footsteps. The building was like a maze, but I felt like the Minotaur, going around edges and ducking through doorways like I was at home. I rushed out of a side door into the cool air before dawn. He was there, with the door open and the car running. I heard him shout, "Let's go." Once I knew it was time to go. We left behind Architect 666 and his offer, but not the truth he told us. It was everywhere, and I wasn't the only thing it was interested in or hunting. The first light of dawn crept across the sky as we drove. It was a sign of fresh starts and a harsh reality. It wasn't really the end. As long as Architect 666 was out there, other people were in danger. I made it through, but that was only the beginning. Not only was I trying to stay alive, but I was also trying to fight back and get out of the web that was trying to catch me. I wasn't by myself this time. That is not mine. I remember shouting those words, but at that moment, they felt as hollow as my hope of convincing anyone. It was too neat, too perfect a trap, and I had walked right into it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. That comes later. It all started in a place where I was the master, the unseen, a place where I was as comfortable as a fish in water. The dark web. My name is Alex, and if you've ever dipped your toes into the shadowy waters of the dark web, you might cross paths with me. Not that you'd know it. I'm what you'd call a veteran, a navigator of the net's underbelly, adept at weaving through its layers of obscurity and encryption like it's second nature. I spent nights debating, exploring, and sometimes just watching. Anonymity was my cloak, and I wielded it with the finesse of a seasoned duelist. But that night, the night that would start the unraveling, I was in the mood for a battle of wits. I found it on a forum known for its notoriety, a digital coliseum for the most vehement and unyielding minds. The argument was heated, the kind that leaves your fingers flying across the keyboard, your heart racing, and your mind electrified. It was with a user whose handle I knew all too well, Cypher Shadow. Our exchanges were legendary, and this one was shaping up to be a duel for the ages. As the debate spiraled, the attacks became personal, the insults sharper, each of us trying to outdo the other. I felt a rush, a high, a sense of invincibility as I typed my final retort, something so cutting, so decisive, that I knew it would leave Cypher Shadow reeling. I hit send and leaned back, the glow of the screen illuminating my smirk of triumph. But victory is often the prelude to downfall. As I basked in the afterglow, an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I had gone too far, ventured too deep, and something told me that this was not the end of it. I tried to shake the feeling, to tell myself it was just another win, but the seed of dread had been planted. Little did I know, it was about to sprout into a nightmare that would consume my world. I shut down for the night, the uneasy feeling lingering like the aftertaste of a bitter pill. As I lay in bed staring into the darkness, the thrill of the debate faded, replaced by the creeping tendrils of something sinister, reaching out from the very shadows I had so skillfully navigated. The memory of last night's debate had settled into the corners of my mind by morning, like the remnants of a storm cloud that threatened to burst, but never did. I was midway through my first cup of coffee, the bitter tang a welcome bite, when the knock came. It was forceful, insistent, a harbinger of chaos. "That is not mine," I yelled, but the words were drowned out by the clamor of a door being rammed open and the rush of boots on laminate flooring. My apartment, once my sanctuary, was invaded by a swarm of police officers, their badges glinting like the eyes of predators in the half-light. "What is the meaning of this?" I managed to say, my voice steady despite the adrenaline that spiked through my veins. But they weren't there for explanations. They were there for evidence. My computer, the gateway to my nocturnal escapades, was seized. I watched, as if from outside myself, while they unearthed files laced with the poison of illegality, files I had never seen nor downloaded. A sick realization curdled in my stomach. "I've never seen that before," I pleaded, my protest feeble against the stark reality of digital fingerprints that claimed otherwise. "You have to believe me." But the officer's eyes held no room for belief, only the cold reflection of duty. Handcuffs clicked around my wrists with the finality of a judge's gavel. As they led me away, the faces of my neighbors peered out from behind slightly ajar doors, a tableau of curiosity and judgment. The ride to the station was a blur, the world outside the barred windows, a streak of colors without form. My thoughts were a whirlpool, circling around one name, Cypher Shadow. They had taken our online skirmish into the real world, weaponized my digital footprint into a shackle more binding than any metal. At the precinct, I was processed with an efficiency that was almost impersonal. Mugshots, fingerprints, the cold sweep of a metal detector. Each step was a descent further into a nightmare I could not wake from. In a small room with walls the color of dirty snow, I waited for what came next. The ticking of the clock was a countdown to an uncertain fate. Each second, a heavy footfall in the march of time. I was alone, but not. There was another player in this game, one who had made their move with a stealth that I had to admire, even as it spelled my doom. As the door opened to admit my interrogator, I steeled myself. The real fight was about to begin. The interrogation room was a claustrophobic box, the air stale with the scent of fear and old coffee. The chair they offered was hard, the surface cold against my skin. I felt the weight of the detective's gaze, unyielding as he sat across from me, a file thick with accusations between us. I only use the dark web for debates and information, I began, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. I'm not involved with the content you found. It's not mine. I repeated the plea, a mantra against the damning evidence. The detective, a man with eyes as sharp as the questions he asked, sifted through the files with a skeptic's thoroughness. You expect me to believe that? That someone framed you for what? An online argument? His disbelief was a tangible thing, and I fought against the tide of desperation. It was more than an argument. It was a war of ideologies. But I swear, I didn't cross that line. He leaned back, the chair creaking under the shift of his weight, his expression unreadable. You're either incredibly naive or very clever, Alex. But without direct evidence linking you to the creation or distribution of this content, we can't hold you. I blinked, the words taking a moment to register. So I can go. Disbelieving. For now. But we're keeping an eye on you. Don't leave town. With those parting words, I was thrust back into the world. A free man in theory, but shackled by suspicion and fear. The door of the precinct closed behind me with the finality of a cell door. The sound a grim reminder of the narrow escape. I walked the streets, the city around me a blur. I was out, but not clear. The shadow of the dark web a cloak I could no longer shake off. Cypher Shadow's treachery had seen to that. I had to go back in, to dive into the murky depths once more. Not for the thrill, not for the anonymity, but for my life. The hunt was on, but was I the hunter or the prey? The dull glow of my screen was a lighthouse in the storm that had become my life. As I navigated back into the dark web's labyrinth, I felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, tainted now with desperation. Cypher Shadow had drawn me into a game of cat and mouse, but the stakes were my very freedom. The digital trails were convoluted, a maze meant to confuse and ensnare. But I had to find the breadcrumbs. Each click was measured, every page scrutinized for the trap I knew awaited. The forums were no longer a battleground for ideas. They were minefields, each user a potential ally or enemy. I encountered shady figures, their handles flickering in and out of existence like ghosts. Offers to help came at the price of bitcoins, but their eyes held the glint of treachery. I trusted no one. In this realm, I was alone. Then came the attacks. Pop-ups with threats, my screen flickering with the visage of the skull, a sign of the digital death that loomed over me. Malware attempted to infiltrate my system, each one a silent assassin. I narrowly deflected. Cypher Shadow was watching, toying with me, a predator enjoying the hunt. But I pressed on, driven by the raw need to clear my name. Each clue unraveled led to another, a thread weaving through the web's darkest corners. I was close. I could feel it. The signs were there, subtle shifts in the digital undercurrent that pointed to Cypher Shadow's lair. As dawn crept through the cracks of my blinds, I stumbled upon a sight, a mirror of the forum where it all began. It was different, distorted like a reflection in a funhouse mirror, and in its center was a message, a single line that sent chills down my spine. Looking for me. I was, and I had found something, or it had found me. The message was a beacon, a signal that the endgame was approaching. But as I prepared to delve deeper, to finally confront Cypher Shadow, a knock echoed through my apartment, a foreboding sound that seemed to resonate with my racing heartbeat. The hunt was not over. It had merely shifted battlegrounds. The knock was soft, almost hesitant, but in the silence of my apartment, it thundered in my ears. I stood motionless, breath caught in my throat, my eyes fixed on the door. The digital chase had led me here, to a precipice between two worlds, and the knock was a cue for the final act. Looking for me, the message from the mirror site echoed in my mind. They were close. Perhaps just beyond the door, the anonymous adversary materialized from the shadows of the web into my reality. With cautious steps, I approached, every creak of the floorboards, a drumbeat to my racing heart. I reached for the door, my hand trembling, the cold metal of the knob a jolt to my system. I flung the door open, ready to confront my nemesis, but the hallway was empty, the silence mocking. My eyes darted to the ground where an envelope lay, innocuous yet ominous. I picked it up, the paper light in my hands but heavy with implication. Inside, a single printed line. You were always one step behind Alex. The game had changed. It wasn't just about being framed anymore. Cypher Shadow knew me, not just my online persona, but me, Alex. They weren't just a shadow, they were flesh and blood, and they had been closer than I had ever imagined. Panic set in, a cold, clawing thing that threatened to unravel me. I had to move, to leave, to escape the invisible eyes I felt upon me. But as I turned to pack a bag, my computer pinged, a new message notification flashing on the screen. It was from Cypher Shadow. You can't run from your shadow, Alex. I realized then that this was far from over. Cypher Shadow was playing a game with no end, a cat with a mouse that could never escape. The knock, the message. It was all a demonstration of power, a proof that they could reach out and touch my world whenever they wished. The story doesn't end here, not really. I'm still here, still searching, still trying to outsmart the shadow that lurks just out of sight. But every knock, every unknown number, every unexpected email sends a jolt of fear through me. And somewhere out there, Cypher Shadow is watching, waiting, a story without an end.